My family was at a restaurant to eat out because we celebrated Uncle's 50th birthday. We also brought our dog along. I completely understand when people are annoyed when there are dogs everywhere, and some people really take it too far. I get it, but basically we had no choice. Our girl has trauma and can't stay alone for too long, and we had no one to watch her. And I know everyone says that, but she's really well behaved. She just lays under the table, looks around a bit, and sometimes begs a little, but only from us. She's also really small. Anyway, there were some couples and groups of threes present, but the only other bigger party were, what I guess, a mum, a grandma, and 2 kids, 3 6-ish. I should say that I like kids, I really do. I want to work with kids. In fact, I'm 18, by the way. But these little guys were still somewhat disturbing. They screeched and yelled, and one of the kids asked like 3 times for fries when they were already ordered for him. A bit annoying, but not to the point I would complain, honestly. However, pretty suddenly the grandma started to complain about people that bring their dog everywhere, and that it's so gross when one is in a closed area. She looked in our direction with an annoyed face, and I admit it annoyed me pretty much. Would it have been any of the other guests, I would understand. But our girl was simply minding her own business while their kiddos annoyed everyone. So I looked at her and said, "That's rich coming from you, since your group is the most disturbing one here, while no one complains about Tinker." The grandma stared at me and then looked at my parents so they would say something. But my mum simply continued to eat, and my dad looked back at her and grinned. She looked like she wanted to say more, but the other woman told her to let it be and try to calm the kids down. We didn't interact further the rest of our stay. This happened 2 days ago, but I'm still unsure if I was my call to say what I said, because I know how kids can be, and it really can be annoying when everyone brings their dog everywhere, but I just felt the need to defend my dog because she wasn't doing anything. So Reddit, am I the idiot? Edit. I didn't ask if I'm the AH for bringing our dog with us. The restaurant was dog-friendly. Edit 2. I'm not American. Please stop calling me names for doing something legally. Edit 3. I'm going to log out now. This is a little bit overwhelming and some people are sadly getting toxic. I'll accept everyone's judgment. I honestly didn't want to start a dogs and kids restaurant debate, and I see now that dog culture is very different in Europe than in the US. Thanks to the nice and constructive people that didn't just call me names. Final edit logging in one final time. I was overwhelmed by the big amount of comments. I never expected that and had to go offline for a while. I'm autistic, if this is an explanation. I never intended this to become a heated debate about dogs and restaurants, and now I don't hate children. I love them. I think both kids and dogs should be allowed in restaurants, but there should also be a few restaurants in every town where one or both of them are not allowed. I also understand now that the whole thing is really cultural. I still don't think that having a dog in a restaurant is a horrible thing, but I'll try to be more considerate of others in the future. I was being called dramatic for my edits, but some comments insulted me or my parents, and I do not appreciate that. You don't have to agree with me, but you don't have to insult people. About the fries thing, I took it as an example because the kid was very loud. Our conversations were 3 times interrupted by a loud, "Mommy, I want fries." I don't have a problem with the question in general, I just used it as an example. Lastly, I accept every judgment, and I accept that I could have done better. The case is over for me now. I won't post pictures of Tinker here because I'm afraid some dog haters will insult her. Maybe I'm sensitive and silly, but I was bullied in the past. I don't need that again. Please stop arguing now, people. I didn't want to create any discord. Greetings. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My dog's name is Tinker 2, not the jerk. Tinker was well behaved, not bothering anyone, and I assume the place was dog friendly. The grandmother is the jerk. Comment 2. Not the jerk. If the restaurant allows dogs, then it's not your fault for bringing her. The grandmother is the jerk. Now for the update. The situation with the grandma at the restaurant seemed to have settled down, but little did I know it was just the beginning of a series of events that would leave me scratching my head. After the incident, my family and I continued to frequent the same dog-friendly restaurant without any further issues. Tinker, our dog, was as well behaved as ever, and we even received compliments from other patrons and the staff on how calm and quiet she was. Things were going smoothly, and I was starting to think that maybe I had overreacted that day with the grandma. However, about 2 weeks later we ran into the same family again. This time, they had a small dog with them. It was a bit surprising considering the grandma's previous comments. Their dog was not as quiet as Tinker. It barked at every passerby and even nipped at a waiter's heels. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me, but I decided to keep my thoughts to myself, not wanting to stir up any trouble. A few days after that encounter, my uncle, the one whose birthday we had celebrated, called me. He said he had heard from a friend about our run-in with the grandma and her family. Apparently the story had spread and now there were rumours that my family was causing trouble at the restaurant. My uncle was concerned about the family's reputation and he asked me to avoid any further confrontations. I assured him that we hadn't done anything wrong and that Tinker was always well behaved, but the conversation left me feeling uneasy. I didn't like the idea that people were talking about us, especially when the stories were twisted and exaggerated. Things took an even stranger turn when I started my new job at a local daycare centre. I love working with kids, and I was excited to start. But on my first day, one of the mothers approached me and asked if I was the dog girl from the restaurant. She had heard about the incident and seemed to be judging me for it. I tried to explain the situation, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. The next few weeks at work were tough. I felt like I was under a microscope, with some of the parents whispering and giving me sideways glances. It was stressful, but I focused on doing my job and caring for the kids, which was what I was there for. Then, just a few days ago, the restaurant called us. They politely informed us that while they were still a dog-friendly establishment, they had received complaints from other customers about dogs being present while they were dining. They didn't specifically say it was about Tinker, but the implication was clear. They asked if we could refrain from bringing her in the future to avoid any issues. I was stunned. Tinker had never been a problem, and now it felt like we were being punished because of the grandma's complaints and the rumours that followed. My parents were upset too, but they didn't want to cause a scene, so they agreed to the restaurant's request. Now I'm left wondering what to do. Tinker is part of our family, and it doesn't seem fair that she's no longer welcome at the restaurant because of some unfounded complaints. On the other hand, I don't want to make things difficult for the restaurant or my family, and with the tension at work, I'm feeling more isolated than ever. I'm torn between standing up for what I believe is right and trying to keep the peace. It's a tough spot to be in, and I'm not sure how to move forward. The whole situation feels like it's spiraled out of control, and I'm at a loss for how to handle it. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Oh, the irony. A well-mannered pooch gets the boot while human tykes run amok. Next time, maybe suggest a kiddie leash for the tots. You're not the idiot, but maybe find a spot where Tinker's tail wags are more appreciated than toddler tantrums. Comment 2. Hey, standing up for Tinker was totally fair. It's rough when your fur baby is better behaved than actual babies. You're not the idiot, but it might be time to sniff out a new hangout where both your reputations stay as spotless as Tinker's behaviour. Now, for the next story. My parents are late for everything. They were late for everything while I grew up, and they refuse to care about being late. They do not care how disrespectful it is to everyone else. My older siblings have adjusted to this by planning all kinds of slack into their schedules. Our parents showed up late to both of their weddings, but that had been accounted for, so they were able to participate in the weddings as planned. The same goes for family get-togethers that are hosted by anyone other than my parents. My siblings planned for them to be late. I went the other way. When my parents were late for my high school graduation, I told them that I would never wait for them for any event that I had power over, and I have held to that. When my wife and I hosted our first Thanksgiving after we bought our home, we started eating on time. My parents showed up late after visiting with other family and were surprised to see us all laying around in tryptophan comas. My wife and I got married last weekend and the ceremony went perfectly. Other than my mother not being involved in the candle lighting, my older sister was my backup. My parents showed up 3/4 of the way through the ceremony and ended up sitting at the back of the church. They kept everything in during the receiving line and the formals, but they let me have it afterwards and before the reception. They were very disappointed that they did not get to participate in the ceremony and that they missed so much of it. I was ready for this. I had one of my friends waiting and he took their pictures when they were entering the church and sitting down at the back. He sent me the pictures as a text and as an email. I asked my parents to show me their invitations. They did not have it with them, so I pulled out the one I had ready for this. I showed them the time on the invitation. I asked them what time they showed up. They said that they were only 5 minutes late and that I was a jerk for not waiting. I pulled up my text messages and my email. Both provided a timestamp of when they showed up 35 minutes late. They said that if I knew they were going to be late, that I should have planned for it like my siblings. I told them that I had not put up with their nonsense since I graduated from high school, and why they thought I would start now almost 15 years later. I told them that my siblings could coddle them all they wanted, but to enjoy their time with me, they had better learn to be punctual. They said I was disrespectful, and if I did not like their behaviour, that was entirely my problem. I agreed and said I would be handling all my time with them the exact same way. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. They said I was disrespectful, ha 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 ha. You're the disrespectful one. Chronic lateness is a lack of respect for other people. Good for you for standing up for yourself, not the jerk. Comment 2, not the jerk. It's frankly a little sad that it's taken 2 grown adults 15 years to learn. You expect them to live up to the timeliness standards set by 95% of the people in our society. Now for the update, thanks to everyone who read about the situation with my parents. It's been 2 weeks since the wedding, and a lot has happened since then. After the confrontation at the reception, things were tense. My wife and I left for our honeymoon, and I had a lot of time to think about how to handle the situation with my parents. We returned from our honeymoon to find a message from my parents waiting for us. They wanted to talk. My wife and I agreed that we would meet with them, but only at our house and at a time we set. They agreed, which was the first sign that maybe they were taking this seriously. The day of the meeting, my parents actually showed up on time. That was a shocker. They sat down and we all had a very long conversation. They started by apologizing for missing the ceremony and acknowledged that their chronic lateness had been a problem for years. They admitted that they had been selfish and hadn't considered how their actions affected others, especially me. I was honest with them. I told them how their being late to my high school graduation had hurt me and how I felt disrespected when they didn't make an effort to be on time for important events in my life. I explained that while my siblings might be okay with planning around their tardiness, I wasn't willing to do that anymore. To my surprise, they listened. They didn't make excuses or try to argue, they just listened, and then they promised to change. They said they wanted to be a part of my life and my future family's life, and they understood that meant they needed to respect my time and the commitments they made. Over the next 2 weeks, we saw a change in them. They started showing up on time for family dinners and other small events. It was like they were trying to prove that they could do it. And honestly, it felt good to see them making an effort. My siblings were surprised by the change in our parents. They were so used to planning for their lateness that it took them a while to adjust to our parents actually being on time, but they were happy about it. It seemed like my confrontation had sparked a change that was benefiting everyone. The real test came when we had a family get-together at my house. It was a casual BBQ, nothing fancy, but it was the first big event since the wedding. My parents showed up not just on time, but early. They helped set up, and they were there to greet everyone as they arrived. It was like we were seeing a whole new side of them. During the BBQ, my dad pulled me aside. He thanked me for standing up to them. He said that it had been a wake-up call and that he didn't want to be the kind of person who was remembered for always being late. He wanted to be remembered for being there when it mattered. My mom echoed his sentiments. She had tears in her eyes when she told me that she was sorry for all the times they'd let me down. She promised that from now on, they would do better. And I believed her. The BBQ ended up being a great time. It felt like our family had turned a new leaf. There was no tension, no waiting around for people to show up, just good food and good company. As for my wife and I, we're doing great. We're settling into married life and enjoying every minute of it. We're both happy that my parents are making an effort to change. It's brought us all closer together, and it feels like we're starting a new chapter as a family. In the end, I'm glad I stood my ground. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And it led to a happy ending that I wasn't sure was possible. My parents are on time now, and our relationship is better for it. It's nice to know that sometimes standing up for what you believe in can lead to real change. And that's exactly what happened here. Now, for the comments. Comment 1. Not the idiot. It's tough love, but sometimes that's what it takes for people to realize the impact of their actions. You're not being disrespectful. You're setting boundaries. It's great that your parents finally acknowledge their behavior and are making an effort to change. Keep communicating openly and honestly. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Reminds me of when my cousin had to set boundaries with our grandma who'd always show up late. It caused a bit of a stir at first, but eventually, grandma started being on time. It's all about consistency and not enabling the tardiness. Good on you for sticking to your guns. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.